Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. How's life of everyone is good and healthy. My name is Farhan Mulyadin Satya Dharma. Me and my friends Hawatifah Zakiyah and Ikrima Umi Kulsum want to try to explain the material about implicature. So here we go. It is known that implicator is an indirect meaning or implied meaning caused by what is said or explicature. Using implicature in communicating means stating something indirectly. And there's also theory of cooperative principle and the maxim. According to Grice, 1975, basically each party tries to work together in communicating so that communication can run smoothly according to its objectives. The guide that governs it by Grice is called the cooperative principle, which contains make your conversational contribution such as is required at the state at which it occurs by the accepted purpose or direction of the talk exchange in which you are engaged. Grice complements his cooperative principle theory with his second theory, namely the conversational maxim theory or MP, and the maxim theory consists of four maxims as follows. The first is maxim of quality, that saying something honestly, and this maxim is clarified by two sub-maxims. The first is based on the truth, and the second is don't say something for which there isn't enough evidence. And the second is maxim of quantity, mean to say as much as needed, make your contribution as informative as needed, and don't make your contribution more than necessary, no more no less. And the third is maxim of relation, that make your contribution relevant to the conversation. And the fourth is maxim of manner, that also has sub-maxims that avoid obscurity. Second is avoid ambiguity, and the third is brief. And thanks, that's for me. And next slide will be continue with Hawatifah Zakiyah.
My name is Hawatifah Zakiyah, and I will give an example of the maxim. Do you know where Joko is? Dad, there's a blue car parked there. The question, do you know where Joko is, which was answered with, Dad, there's a blue car parked there. At first glance, it seems that there is no cooperation from the person. My name is Hawatifah Zakiyah, and I will give an example of the maxim. Do you know where Joko is? Dad, there's a blue car parked there. The question, do you know where Joko is, which was answered with, Dad, there's a blue car parked there. At first glance, it seems that there is no cooperation from the person who answered the question. The answer does not comply with the maxim of quantity, maxim of relation, and maxim of manner, violating the maxim of quantity because the answer does not provide the required information. It should be answered with I don't know, or say where Joko's position is if he knows his whereabouts. The answer also violates the maxim of relation because what is being asked is the whereabouts of the person, not the car, and violates the maxim of manner because it does not provide clear information about the whereabouts of the person being asked. However, if examined more deeply, actually listeners have tried to work together in responding to the question. He adheres to the cooperative principle by using an implicature strategy to answer it. With the knowledge shared by both of them, he answered the existence of the person with the blue car because he believed that the questioner knew who the owner of the car was, namely Joko. His disobedience to maxim was caused by a clash between the maxims with each other. He does not want to violate the maxim of equality. With the blue car, it can be concluded that Joko is most likely in the vicinity, although he may not know for sure where Joko is. From this example, it can be seen that implicature is actually an attempt to comply with the cooperative principle, but due to certain conditions, which are related to the purpose of communication, not all maxims can be obeyed. Okay, next, how to identify implicators. Conflict with maxim. At the beginning, it was explained that maxim regulates how people communicate. When communicating, there are four possibilities that are taken by speakers related to maxim, as follows. A. Observe the maxims. Obeying maxim means that all maxims in the conversation are really considered and become the basic assumption that basically all conversation participants will cooperate. B. Opting out of a maxim, namely using H to eliminate or reduce the effect of maxims. C. Floating a maxim. That is, the speaker intentionally disobey one or more maxims with the knowledge of the interlocutor. D. Violating a maxim, namely, the speaker intentionally violates the principle of cooperation without the knowledge of the interlocutor. For the example, lying.
Okay, thank you, Hawa. I'm gonna continue to explain the conflict with maxim. Implicature occurs when the speaker chooses flouting a maxim, namely by ignoring one or more maxims with the knowledge of the interlocutor through the context or shared knowledge among the conversation participants. Ignoring maxim is usually done by conveying erroneous information intentionally, uninformative, irrelevant, abstruse, and long-winded, and ambiguous, so that the listener can suspect that something is implied and completely different from what is said. Speakers who clearly do not follow the maxims are said to have ignored the maxim. This is what triggers the implicature. With such clarity, the speech partner will understand that the speaker ignores one or several maxims for a certain reason, and he must interpret the true meaning of the neglect of the maxim. The next is about the example of maxim itself. The first one is maxim of quality. We can see that A said, "Who won the match yesterday?" and B answered, "Manchester did." So we can see the implicature here is that assuming that B is cooperative and provides information for which he has evidence, his reply is true and therefore Manchester won the match. Otherwise, B would have provided a different answer. Next example is about the maxim of quantity. We can see that A said, "Have you read Agatha Christie's novels?" and B answered, "I have read some." So we can see the implicature here is that B hasn't read all Agatha Christie's novels, but only some of them, only some of the novel. Next, the example of the maxim of relevance. We can see that A said, "How are the music lessons going?" and the B answered that, "Not great, but I'd rather not discuss it now." We can see that the implicature here is that the music lessons are not going so well. Next example is about the maxim of manner. That A said, "Do you love me?" and B said, "Of course I do." We can see that implicature here that is provided that B is cooperative, that he or she is giving a clear, unambiguous answer, but therefore B loves A. The next example is about the maxim of violating. We can see that A asked B, where does she live? And B answered, somewhere in the south of France. That we can know that B doesn't know in which town she lives. B just mentioned that she just live in the south of France. The next example is fluting a maxim. We can see that A asked B that how are we getting there? And B said, well, we're getting there in Dave's car. So we can see here that the flutes of the maxim here is the quantity, because the B answered a question with less information, and the implicature here is that A will not be traveling with them. Based on this explanation, it can be concluded that the mechanism of implicature occurrence based on Grace's theory as follows: that as a speaker says speech with speaker main, and S clearly ignores maxim, so that H understands that S is trying to cooperate but for some reason ignores maxim by saying speech, and speaker means that H concludes for himself that speech implies speaker main. That's all for our group. I hope you can understand about the material. If there is a question, you can ask us in the question and answer session. Thank you.